Martin in Enid, Oklahoma, asks, was Yahweh's presence absent from the Second Temple because of the Ark of the Covenant was no longer present?
Yeah, I think that is the conclusion we're supposed to draw. I mean, Ezekiel has the glory, the presence of God departing before Jerusalem and its temple are destroyed. Again, we covered that in our series on Ezekiel. There's no evidence anybody thereafter in the Second Temple period when they build, they rebuild the temple, or they actually build, a second temple. There's no evidence that anybody thought that the glory had returned. There's no passage that gives that indication. Interestingly enough, though, even though the question presupposes something that's correct, the God's presence is gone from the temple. Again, it's not just the ark. It's because of the apostasy, but the ark is gone, and so on and so forth. The glory departs before Jerusalem and the temple are destroyed. Okay, that's pretty self-evident. But what's really interesting is that the New Testament takes this idea about the return of the glory. It actually takes certain passages that talk about the return of the glory, seeing God in Jerusalem again, and applies them to Jesus. Now, I'll just give you a few for instances here. In Ephesians 5:14, we read, "For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." You say, well, what does that have to do with the temple? Well, it's actually a repurposing of Isaiah 60, verses 1 and 2. Now listen to that. "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will be seen upon you." Okay, this is Isaiah 60. This is set in an exilic and post-exilic era. So here you have a situation where the future glory, of God is again going to be, shining, upon Jerusalem, upon Israel again. And Paul takes that and applies it to Jesus. "Arise, Christ will shine on you." You just, you have John the Baptist. John the Baptist is herald. He's the herald of the coming of the Messiah. But there's actually glory language connected to the passages that the gospel use to talk about the messenger that comes before the Messiah. Isaiah 40, verse 5, "The glory of the Lord shall be revealed." There's a reference to the glory, pretty explicit. "The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken." If you go out to Isaiah 40, again, this is, the crooked, places will be made straight. And this is this messianic language. And Mark and other gospel writers quote Isaiah 40, verse 5, and other parts of Isaiah 40 to give context to John the Baptist being the herald from Isaiah 40, who is announcing the return of the Lord, the return of the glory. And that turns out to be Jesus in the Gospels. You get a passage like Isaiah 66, verses 18 and through 19, that you get sort of a similar feel to this. Verse 18 says, "For I know their works and their thoughts, and the time is coming to gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come and shall see my glory. And I will set a sign among them, and from them I will send survivors to the nations, to Tarshish, to Pul, to Lud, who draw the bow, to Tabal and Javan, to the coastlands far away, that have not heard my fame or seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the nations." Now, look at the elements of that. The time is coming to gather all nations and tongues. They shall come and shall see my glory. And I'm going to set this sign among them, okay? And then they're going to go from here. They're going to spread all over to these different nations. Tarshish, of course, ought to draw the interest of this audience. Tubal, Javan. I mean, these are places mentioned in the Table of Nations, so on and so forth, to the coastlands that are far away. Why? Why am I sending them out? Because they have not heard my fame or seen my glory, and I'm going to make sure that it's declared among the nations. If you look at that, and Paul, in a few of his epistles, draws on Isaiah 66, this passage, to talk about his own ministry. And then you look at what happens in Acts chapter 2 with the coming of the Spirit, when the nation, people from the nations are gathered, they see, this miracle of Pentecost, and then they go back to their nations and start, spreading the word about the Messiah. You could actually make a good argument that the pouring out of the Spirit in Acts chapter 2 is the return of the glory. And it's different, but it's the same as Jesus. This whole Jesus is but isn't the Spirit, kind of thing. That these events, let's just speak broadly, the coming of Messiah, God incarnate, and then following his resurrection and ascension, the coming of the Spirit in his place, that this is the return of the glory. I mean, it's very easy to draw that conclusion from the New Testament. So you don't need an ark. You don't even need a temple. Because in the New Testament, what's up with that? Well, we're the temple. Again, we've had the full episode we had, like on Ezekiel 40 through 48, the part 2. We got into all this New Testament temple language. This is where the glory is now. Okay, all this language about the glory in the temple, it's applied to believers in Jesus. Why, again, why is that consistent? Because we are the body of Christ. I mean, these terms and these metaphors are used to point to these spiritual items, these theological items, deliberately. Again, this is all theological messaging, repurposing the Old Testament.